the main event of these monthly specials, and we're going to be doing this over the next few months, is we're going to be talking about serial killers. And what I mean by that is one in particular, and that is Dexter.
Thank you, Andy. So, as we've mentioned, the monthly shows are going to be different to our weekly shows. And the monthly shows, as Andy mentioned, we're going to focus on a different season of Dexter. So we're going to rewatch the show in order, and then we're going to discuss, scrutinize the episodes. We're going to look at the characters and some observations while we've rewatching Dexter for I would say, probably the second time, because we've watched it all once before, but I've not watched Dexter since it was first aired years ago. So grab your blood splatter kits, sharpen your knives. We are going into season 1 and exploring the sinister side of TV's most notorious serial killer. So Andy, do you want to just start episode 1?
Indeed. So we're going to go episode by episode for the most part. We may wander here and there, but we're not going to go into great detail about each episode. But there's a few things that I've called out as notes. So Jay, jump in at any point if you want to add to anything or challenge anything. But my note on episode 1 was basically this was setting the scene. This is introducing all the main characters. So who is Dexter? What is he all about? Who are the main characters in the periphery, as it were? And I thought this was a really, really good way of getting to know Dexter and what kind of motivates him. And one of the things that really motivates him, or kind of defines him, is the Code of Harry. Now that's going to be a talking point throughout the entire run, because he is a serial killer, but he has a code. He won't just kill for the sake of killing. There's got to be a reason. And this is where we first see this sort of introduced, isn't it, in terms of how the code is explained.
Yeah, I think it's clever. It's clever how they do this, Andy, because I'm just going to jump to one of my comments, because you talk about the Code of Harry, and there's got to be a reason why Dexter follows that. You know, what is that reason that Harry's kind of passed on this knowledge, this code? And I think, jumping to my comment here, Andy, is I think the writers were really clever about how they introduced Dexter to this, because I think in terms of how he picks his victims as well, he's very meticulous about it has to follow Harry's code that you've just mentioned. And I think the thing that was really clever was, in this episode, we see Dexter kill a paedophile and a rapist/murderer. So straight away, you're getting the audience to side with Dexter and follow the Code of Harry.
Exactly right. He is a good guy. He just happens to kill, which is the normal motive of a bad guy. But I mentioned the introduction of the various characters, which we will talk about. But one of the characters that sticks in my mind, and as soon as he appeared on screen, it just made me smile, and that's Sergeant Dokes. The interaction between Dexter and Dokes throughout the season is just hilarious to me.
I have a different view of Dokes. I do not like Dokes at all. You know, I would have loved to see a prequel to this, because I'm assuming the relationship has always been like that. I know Dokes kind of alludes to it over the next few episodes. He thinks Dexter's weird, isn't he? And I don't think there's anything that kind of made him think that. What is it? Just his general how he behaves, Dexter, in terms of Dokes just takes a dislike straight away. I don't think there was like a trigger point, was there? That's from that point.
No, I know what you mean. It's not. There's nothing that starts Dokes thinking that way. He just always thinks that way. So from the first interaction, you just know that Dokes does not like Dexter, and he thinks he's weird, and he creeps him out.
Yeah, no. I don't like him. I don't know why you like him, Andy. He's well built, isn't he? Is he an ex-SEAL or Marine? I think he mentions.
I think he's certainly ex-military, isn't he? And he's got that look about him.
Yeah.
But I remember the interaction. I just find it quite amusing. Now I'll let you get into some of the nuances in terms of the story of what's happening in episode 1, but there's just a couple of things that I wanted to call out that I noticed. One was about Lieutenant LaGuerta, Maria. She's very flirty, isn't she, with Dexter? I think she really takes a shine to her, and I don't remember that from first time round. So, as you mentioned, this is our first time watching it since it aired originally, so this is going back, what, must be 15 years now at least. And I don't remember that flirty nature of Maria towards Dexter, but it was very prevalent from the offset.
Yeah, I didn't recall it was that full on, but it does. Now you're saying that, Andy, I do wonder. Does it ever mention whether she's had any relationships with anyone else? Is Dexter just the one that she's got her eye on, or has she had other kind of relationships? Because I don't recall.
I don't think so at this stage. I think it is alluded to that her and Dokes have worked together in the past. I think that maybe they were partners in the professional sense, as in they were, detectives that worked together. I didn't get the feeling that there was anything romantic there, so it could be off base. But no, she just seems to be quite smitten by Mr. Morgan.
Yeah, so she has a very contrasting opinion of Dexter compared to Dokes then. Flip side of the coin there, both of them, isn't it?
Exactly.
Extremes.
I guess she can't see Dexter for what he really is. But Dexter's obviously not taking the bait because he's already got a girlfriend. We're introduced to Rita in this episode. It's a very, very complicated relationship. So as Dexter is introduced, you get, he's not normal, clearly. But he's got to appear normal. And one of the ways of doing that is having a relationship. Because normal people have boyfriends and girlfriends, I guess. So he's got this girlfriend, Rita, but she's quite troubled as well. So it's a very complicated relationship, to say the least, isn't it?
It is complicated, and Dexter mentions, doesn't he? I don't know if it's this episode or when things are going a bit pear-shaped with Rita. He mentions previous girlfriends, doesn't he? Relationships, and he says like it kind of gets to this point, and then it kind of fizzles out, and then so he's had relationships where he's kind of played this game in terms of that perception of he's normal, air quotes.
I think I don't know if it's explicitly said if it's this episode or if it's later on, but basically it's when it gets to the point of having sex, that's when his girlfriends realise that he's not quite right. And when that was first sort of said, I was like, well, how is he a bit of a freak in the bedrooms? Like, why would they think that? Or I guess it's just they see something in him from that point onwards, so he doesn't let it get to that point so that they can't see the real him.
Yeah, no, yeah. I don't think he brings out his clean film or anything like that, or kind of cosplay. But yeah, like you said, Andy, I'm just going to pick out a couple of things. So this happens pretty much at the end, if I'm not mistaken. So Dexter is following a truck that he suspects to be the ice truck killer. So they've got this lead, and a victim's head is thrown at Dexter's front windscreen. So he was on to the real ice truck killer. So that is, I would say, a coincidence, but obviously later on in the season we find out who the ice truck killer is. Well, at this point in time, we don't know who he or she is. And it ends with Dexter finding a doll in his fridge that the ice truck killer has left a little present for Dexter. And if it was me, Andy, I'd be quite freaked out about that. But Dexter is quite, I don't want to say smitten, but he's quite happy, isn't he, to have like this playmate?
Yeah, the game is on, isn't it? And I think he realises that maybe there's somebody else out there that's a bit like him. And they know about Dexter, but Dexter is hunting, so it adds another dynamic to things for sure. And I guess, which would be worse, finding that doll in your freezer or finding the penguin in your freezer?
I think it's easier to sort out the doll than the penguin. And I was surprised, Andy, that we were introduced in terms of what I was surprised that the doll was happened in the first episode. I thought there was a bit more lead up, because I remembered the wind, the head being thrown at the windscreen. I remembered that, But I didn't realise it happened in the first episode. I thought that was a bit later on, but it's straight away, he's killed. So he's got 2 kills in this episode, and then he's had a run-in with the ice truck killer. All in episode 1.
Yeah, it's a fantastic way to start the series. I thought a really, really good episode.
So, moving on to episode 2, Andy, what's your thoughts on this one?
So the first thing I noted was that introduction. So in episode 1, we didn't get the normal introduction that we're now used to, but the introduction where he's basically doing everyday tasks, isn't he? He's cutting up some bacon, he's making coffee, he's slicing an orange. Or when you list the kind of things that happen, it sounds really, really mundane and boring, doesn't it? But the way it's shot, with the music and how everything is somewhat linked to like crime or murder, or just everything about it is really, really cool. And I think it's arguably one of the best TV introductions of any show ever. But it's episode 2 when we first see it. I didn't realise we didn't have it for episode 1, so it was good to see that back. That was kind of my main takeaway. Now, and a couple of other points that I've put down is, so the ice truck killer is the theme of the series, but within each episode there's certain mini stories, I guess, as they were. And one of the things that happens in this is around a drunk driver who looked very familiar to me, and then I remembered it was Sam from True Blood, which is another excellent TV show as well. But I have to say, I did not take many notes for episode 2 because I was just hooked. I was so engrossed that I forgot that we were recording a podcast that I needed to take notes to talk about it. So I'm going to let you do the heavy lifting on this because I didn't really take any other notes.
Andy, I didn't take money in this episode. I reckon that the drink driver / killer, I recognised him but couldn't figure out where he was from. He had a familiar face, but I didn't realise he was in True Blood. But True Blood is one of those TV programs that I watched the first couple seasons and I kind of dipped out. So I don't know how it ended.
The owner of the bar.
Yes, yeah. When you put down,
is he a shapeshifter?
I believe he is. Yes, from memory. Yeah. But in terms of episode 2, the pertinent point would be the police find the ice truck killer truck that he used. Deb gets I don't know if it's a promotion or just moved into the department. Was it a promotion, Andy? Was it, or she just moved? Because she wanted to get out of Vice, didn't she? But I don't recall if it was an actual promotion.
I don't think it's a promotion as such. I think it's a lateral move, but I guess homicide's where it's at. That's where the rock stars work, isn't it?
Yeah, yes. And Deb is a character that I dislike. I just don't like her at all. Sam from True Blood is Matt Chambers, we find out. Or actually we found out that is his alias that he's using. And from memory, when Dexter's flicking through his research, I think I recall that he tends to use the same name each time. So I think we can be confident that his first name is Matt, but then he changes his surname. And in terms of Dexter kills, it's just the one in this season. But yeah, my notes were quite thin, Andy, on this one.
Yeah, it was just really engrossing, a really, really good episode. Let's move on to episode 3, Dan. And at this point, my wife made me skip the intro. She's freaked out by it. And I remember this from first time round as well. She didn't like the intro, so we always had to either skip through it or we had to, she had to look away. And what she said this time is, it makes her want to be a vegetarian, which I thought was quite a funny thing.
Yeah, I must admit, Andy, I skipped the intro as well. It is an intro I skip. Some TV programs I will watch all the time, but this is not one of them.
Oh, I think it's just fantastic. So I would prefer to watch it to set the tone. Sometimes it's foreplay, is what it is.
Yes. Yeah, we've had an hour of it in this episode, haven't we?
Indeed, yes. We were really teasing you. So this episode focuses on a young kid, and I think you've made some notes about Jeremy. about this, but I made some of the notes about just some things that happen along the way. So Rita has her car taken away from her. Now, we're not going to go massively into detail about every character and every storyline and all that kind of stuff. It's definitely one you should watch. So the highlights are she's got an ex-boyfriend who's a loser, basically, and I think he was a junkie. And one of his junkie mates is owed money, so he's come to collect, so he takes the car. And my note was, Dexter, do something. Like, we know who you are. We know you're a serial killer. You make bad people disappear. But it just kind of like lets it happen. I thought that was a bit disappointing.
He was, I think he was struggling with what he should do and what he might want to do. Because doesn't Rita say something? Or I can't remember. It does, because the bloke that comes kind of antagonises him a little bit as well, but Dexter doesn't do anything.
Yeah, I think that the kid's in the picture as well, so I guess it makes it difficult. But Rita's quite scared. She's a very timid, submissive kind of person. So yeah, they just kind of let it happen. I'll just go over a couple of my other notes, which are not necessarily in any particular order, but just highlights that I picked out. So Masuka, who is a quite amusing character, and as the seasons progress, I think he just gets more and more disgusting in a good way. But he teaches about Butterface and the Bronco, which both made me laugh out loud. Do you want to explain to the listeners what the Bronco is, Jay?
What did your wife think of those little comments?
I think she finds it quite amusing, but she's used to it with me because I'm a bit of a child myself, so she was probably disgusted by it. But no, I think she finds him quite amusing. She also doesn't like Deb. She doesn't find Deb interesting at all. I think she finds her quite annoying. But there was a quote that I found amusing between Dexter and Deb. I can't remember why it came to this, but Deb's upset about something. Dexter says, "Want a hug?" To which Deborah just replies, "Fuck off." I don't know why. I had to note that down because I thought that was quite amusing. And my last note, I believe, of this episode was there was a flashback. So throughout there's flashbacks between Dexter and Harry, really, isn't it? Just to say, kind of, it's almost explaining of how he got to be how he is, and it's a continuation of the code thing and all the things that led to it. But we get a flashback to Dexter's very first kill, and I thought it was a really, really well done scene. But also, he didn't make it easy, did he? He was still refining his technique, shall we say?
Yeah, and we will see, because it must be episodes after this where he does things like hunting, doesn't he? As well. But this is, like you said, his first kill. And the reason why it's a first kill is because we see Harry is in hospital and he's slowly dying. But we actually find out that the nurse is slowly killing Harry as well. And as Andy mentioned, Jeremy is here as well. Dexter does target Jeremy. But at the end of the episode, because you're thinking Dexter's going to kill Jeremy, but at the end of the episode, you find out that Jeremy actually killed his rapist. So Dexter warns Jeremy about killing again, and he lets him live. But this is not the last time we see Jeremy in season 1. Yeah, I thought was a very risky thing for Dexter to do. Yes, because he's exposed himself, figuratively. Yeah, not literally. That was Jeremy's been through enough of that by the sounds of it. But yes, I was a little bit surprised with that. And we have, I think it's a voiceover. Dexter said something about Harry lived for another year after being released from hospital. So the nurse was. We don't know how many kills a nurse has done, because that must be something she's not done. Not the first time, is it, Andy, that she would have done that? Because one of the things I was thinking about is, and I don't want to jump to seasons ahead, Andy, but I don't know if you recall, when we obviously going to track the kills in this season, but I don't think you explicitly find out like the kills before the TV show started. I don't think there's ever a number, is there?
There's not. He's got his little slide box, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Which, is that all the kills?
Yeah, that's what I don't know.
I'm not sure. And I'm jumping ahead a little bit here. In fact, I'm jumping slightly into season 2, but I think there's something in season 2 where he doesn't kill for a period of time, for reasons which we will explain. But and he's getting a bit tetchy, and it's almost like an addict going cold turkey, sort of thing. But I'm sure that period of time is only like a matter of weeks, not a massive long period of time. So for him to have this box of slides, which I don't know, maybe has it got 30, 35, something like that? I don't know. There's never a number said, but it looks like somewhere in the region of about 30, I would estimate. It doesn't seem like a lot if he has the urge to kill on such a regular basis. So I'm not sure what the true number is.
No, I don't. And Andy, do you want to just confirm how many kills Dexter had in episode 3?
Yeah, so I guess technically it's 0 because we don't have any new kills. We do see the flashback with the nurse, but we're not counting that because it's
historic
in the past. Yes, so no new kills in the episode.
So jumping into episode 4, Andy, what kind of comments do you have on this one?
So episode 4, I didn't write the titles down of episodes, by the way, so if anyone's following along at home, it's just whatever the 4th one is called. But I made a little note in terms of what it's about, and it's about the neighbour's dog, as well as everything else that's going on. But my very first note was to do with the ice truck killer. They think they've closing in on him, and they think they've actually found him, but Maria's fucked up. It's Tucci's hand that they find, so he isn't the ice truck killer, and Maria's gone out to the press and said, this is who we believe the ice truck killer is. Their security guard called Tucci. Now, Mrs. Tucci, his mother, is very forgiving of Maria, who obviously feels terrible about what's happened and goes to apologise, but she's very, very forgiving. Probably too forgiving, I would say.
Definitely. She took that well, because I think, does the chief say something about, hope she doesn't sue us? Or I'm sure in America they're quite quick to sue, aren't they, Andy? And I think it was more about damage limitation, but Mrs. Tucci definitely took it better than most people.
Yeah, there's definitely that lawsuit culture, I think. Now, my next note is about the noisy neighbour's dog, or the dog's noisy... No, the neighbour's noisy dog, not the dog's noisy neighbour. This was, at this point, my wife threatened to boycott the rest of the show if anything bad happened to the dog. So we could have been onto a non-starter. It's very, very early on in season 1. Now, another one of the characters that's present throughout is Angel Batista. He's in a bit of a funk, isn't he? He's on the surface. He's in a good place. But his life is falling apart in secret. But I really enjoyed throughout the episode, he's talking about he's got an anniversary coming up, and he keeps showing Dexter these gift ideas, and Dexter just keeps shitting all over them. And I just find that quite amusing, because he just couldn't find it in himself to lie and say, oh yeah, that's a really nice gift. He was just like, yeah, that's crap or whatever. And it was like, it was getting really, really quite upset about it, but I found it amusing.
I like Batista as well. I think he's a good character, and him and Masuka are probably Dexter's best friends in the department.
Yes, I would say so. Whether he considers them friends,
yes, yeah.
But they're the closest to appearing like friends. And my last note, and if you've seen the episode and you remember it, you'll understand why I've said this. Rita makes a pretty good Lara Croft.
Definitely. It's a very good scene, that one, Lara Croft. And in terms of the flashback, we've got Harry tells Dexter the importance of faking it to seem normal and to fit in. And that is because the Polaroid of the beach photo as well, and it's set up exactly the same by the ice truck killer. So that is a Another one that kind of gets Dexter wondering who this ice truck killer is. Lara Croft. Rita's dressed up as Lara Croft because it's Halloween time. It's quite apt because it's just gone past Halloween time when we recorded this episode. And another one about Harry talking about the bullies and blending in again, because we see Dexter at football practice participating in a little bit of bullying, and Harry talks about the importance of kind of just merging in the background because people remember bullies. So he takes that under advisement as well. And my closing statement is, Tucci, much to the relief of Maria, is rescued.
Yes, so they can get back on track with finding the real ice truck killer. But again, in terms of the kill count, technically no new kills in this episode for Dexter, but the series is rolling along quite nicely, and I'm really, really enjoying it. But let's move on to episode 5. Now, the kind of the subplot of this behind the ice truck killer is it's a Cuban immigration type thing, isn't it? That's going on in the background. So there's the kind of the here and now of the episode, as it were. My first note was again related to a flashback, and it's that young Dexter can't read the hints or signals of women, so maybe he is normal after all.
Yes, I like that comment, Andy. It made me chuckle when I saw your notes there, Andy. Yeah, I don't. I think all these episodes, we're obviously at episode 5 so far. I don't think there's been any weak ones.
I agree. I think they've all advanced the story really well. There's all plenty of action and drama and suspense and tension. You get some TV series where they'll have a really good strong opening episode. They'll have a really good ending, finale, cliffhanger, whatever you want. But then the middle is just kind of filler to get you from A to B, and it loses some of the impact. Walking Dead would be an example for me, particularly in later series. I think, you had really good opening episodes, really good mid-season finale, really good season finale, and then everything else is just kind of like meandering all over the place. This is really advancing things, so every episode is a must-watch up to this point.
And I think that's one of the benefits of shorter seasons, Andy.
Indeed, it's backing up your claim from earlier, so point to you. There's another scene that I thought was very, very cringy, and this is with Dexter and Rita watching a movie. It's just really awkward, isn't it? It's difficult to watch.
It is very cringy, this one. Very, very cringy.
Yeah. Now, a note I made here, and I guess you're going to cover this a little bit later on, is plans change, and we've got 2 for 1. So, Dexter's got to adapt on the fly. And my penultimate note was about the medical care in the US being very different to the NHS. Now, do you remember the scene to which I'm referring to here?
Yes, I do remember the scene with Tucci.
Tucci and, yes, one of
Deb's friends.
Deb's old vice.
Yes.
Informants? Not colleagues, because that's not right, but yeah, you don't get that kind of service on the NHS.
No,
that's for sure.
You don't, no. Not that I'm aware of, anyway.
And then my final thought, who is watching him? This is where things start to ramp up. I just wrote, but this is where it's like, the tension is really building.
And I didn't remember this little bit, actually, Andy. So this did throw me, because I'm thinking, how does he get out of that? So I was really intrigued to see how the next episode solved that issue. Now, a couple in terms of what's happening in the episode. Tucci's recovering in hospital. Dexter's investigating the human traffickers. And Dexter has his prom flashback as well. And we briefly see, I don't know whether I should say this, Andy, because it is a spoiler, but we briefly see the ice truck killer. But we don't know it's him yet. So, Andy, my question to you is, did you remember who it was? So when you saw this scene, it was like,
I remembered it from first time round, yeah. So I'm like, oh yeah, here he is, because I couldn't quite remember how he was linked in. At the time of watching it first time round, no idea. But looking back, it's almost obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, it's.
I think, but it's just there's just enough mystery and enough distance here that it is a shocking twist when you find out later on that it's him.
Yeah, definitely. And talking of twist, as Andy mentioned, a 2-for-1, we find out the human traffickers is husband and wife as well. So Dexter was following the husband and got the kill room set up for the husband, but it turns out it's the wife is involved as well. And the thing that made me laugh was, just as he's about to do the deed, he's getting some relationship counselling as well from the victims, because even though they're going to die, they're very loved up still.
Indeed, yeah, he's making the most of them while they're still alive, isn't he?
Yes, and my last comment is, in this episode there were 2 Dexter kills, the hubby and wife. And this leads us on to episode 6, Andy. What's your comments here?
Yeah, not a lot of notes taken here. This was another really, really good episode. So Dexter's called to a crime scene, and it's his crime scene. And it's the wife. She's there, but he'd dispose of the body. So this is like, oh, what is going on here? It's getting really, really stressful to watch at this point. And I'll end with one more note, because again, this was one of those episodes that I was just really engrossed in, so I didn't take many notes, but that was a close one. Jesus Christ.
I love that, Andy. And the female tracker, so as Andy mentioned, has been left by the ice truck killer. And if I recall, because time was pressing, he didn't manage to chop up the wife, but just the husband. So the wife is fully limbed, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct, Andy?
Yet she was very much whole.
So we find out that there was a little boy in the boot trunk that might have seen Dexter, and Dexter's really anxious here, and he's watching the interview, the artist's impression. Rita's ex is also getting out of prison as well. Dexter, I don't know, he is kind of panicking as well, so he dumps his kill weapons, doesn't he? And Deb also then starts to suspect that there's a copycat killer. But if I recall, I think it's this episode, Dexter tries to get her off that scent, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. I'm trying to think what he does to kind of throw her.
He verbally, I think he said it, like, did he say very cliched, or, where she's saying, like, it should be, well, essentially she's describing what he looks like. I think it's this episode, and she was saying,
oh, is this where she's put the profile together?
Yeah, I think it's this one.
It's linked to the, yeah, so he's kind of just shoots her down, and she's quite upset by it, isn't she?
Yeah. And then we find out that the sketch artist draws Jesus.
Indeed, hence my earlier witticism of it being a close one. But again, technically, no new kills in this episode. So that's the halfway point of the season. So let's move on to episode 7. Now, episode 7, we are reintroduced to Jeremy, but more on him a little bit later, because also Rita's ex is back on the scene, and this is not going to end well for him. I just have a feeling. He features, I think, for the rest of the season, doesn't he? And quite heavily. So I'll not spend any more time talking about him. But I mentioned Jeremy's back, the kid from episode 3, and I was thinking this is going to be quite interesting. How are they going to weave this back into things? I also made a note that at this point Dexter is disappointed in the ice truck killer. And I also noted that he's taken a lot more chances. Too many. Between what happened in the scrapyard and going in to see Jeremy in the interrogation room, he's, and this again is comedy genius, he's cutting it fine.
You like a pun, Andy.
there's I'll save my last note, which is a quote, until you've gone through your points, because it's kind of the last scene of the episode, so I won't jump ahead.
No. So as Andy mentioned, Rita's ex is back on the scene, and he's called Paul. Deb thinks she's getting closer to the airstruck killer, and they find a dead body under the trailer. And in terms of Andy, I'd just say Dexter's kills was 0 in this episode before you just kind of close this episode up nice and neat.
Yes, it was, and I took note of another quote, because I like these funny things, or in this case it was quite telling. So Dexter went in to see the eye-struck killer. They've caught him. He's admitted to it. His name's Perry. Perry's his first name or surname, I can't remember, but Perry. So Dexter's really keen to meet him. Of course, he's got to go in there for official police business. I think he's got to take a sample or something, hasn't he? But obviously the airstruck killer's been watching him, so he's going to know who Dexter is, right? So Dexter says hi, to which Perry replies, "Who the f*** are you?" And a big smile comes across Dexter's face, because he realizes the real killer's still out there, so the game is still on. But I thought that was just a very poignant way of saying, I'm not who you think I am.
Yes, because obviously, as the audience, we do not know that he is not the airstruck killer until that point. So it's very well done. So we're moving on to episode 8. I'm just going to kick us off. So Dexter has his first flashback to a bloody scene as a kid as well. And I can't remember if he passes out fully, or he just kind of just quickly just collapses and then he's back up again. He's making progress with Rita. Maria finds out that the killer has faked his confession as well, and that's very well done. And we find out the true identity. Oh, sorry. It's not the true identity yet, but we find out who the eye-struck killer is. We don't find out the true identity until later on in the season.
No, we know who he is, but we don't really know who he is yet. But the opening scene, or one of the early scenes, Deb's got a new boyfriend, and it's the consultant who, we find out who he is very soon. And I made this note, and I apologise, because I'm reading it back, it is quite childish. It's raining, but Deb's getting wet inside the car.
Andy, I need to put you up here, because I think this is like the sequel thing. So in season 3, we have gone to an R rating, and our first 2 seasons were very PG or 12A at worst.
Yeah, I've definitely lowered the tone, haven't I? In I guess that's what the extra is. You get that bit extra.
Yes.
Maybe it should be XX extra.
X.
We'll maybe charge for that on some sort of OnlyFans type platform. There was a good flashback scene of Dexter and Harry doing, quote, normal father and son stuff, where Dexter's basically practicing his ambush technique, isn't he, and manages to ambush Harry at the fridge. Nice little scene there. A couple of things that I would want to make note of throughout this episode. So one of the characters in this is the shrink, who Dexter goes to visit. He's sharing far too much with the shrink. Is one note that I made. He's just, certain things he doesn't need to be saying out loud.
He's very confident, though, isn't he? And by saying that, he has that self-assurance. Because I was thinking that, and especially when he finds out that he's taping everything, recording everything. I know he gets the tape or the CD or whatever it is, but I don't know if they had cloud backup in those days or not. But he was very, very open about what he was sharing.
Could have very easily been copied or sent out or something. And I don't know the Harry's Code word for word, but I'm pretty sure some of it will be about not getting caught. And that's a surefire way to get caught, is by opening your mouth. But one question I did have is, why does Dexter do so much dodgy stuff on his work laptop?
He does. I know.
Like, IT policies and such, You can't do those sort of things on your work laptop. Like you just wouldn't, and especially if you're trying to get away with murder several times over, you definitely wouldn't be doing stuff like that. But it seems to be a common thing where he just uses his work laptop for this kind of stuff. And my final note: there's a lot of fucking in this episode. It's, there's no other way to say it. There just is. But we have another kill to add to Dexter's kill count from this episode. The shrink, if memory serves correctly, that would make sense, wouldn't it? Moving on now, we're on to episode 9. We're getting towards the business end now. And Dexter and Dokes just seem to be heading for a showdown. There's a scene where there's basically discrepancies in what Dokes is saying. But as Dexter points out, blood never lies. It's not gonna end well, is it? This.
And this is one of the episodes that I remember, before rewatching it. And this is one that kind of stood out. I couldn't remember why, but I remembered that beginning with the bridge, and them running, chasing. I remembered that, but I couldn't remember how the outcome of it and why he did it.
Yeah. One of the more memorable scenes as well for me. I won't read this note verbatim, but I basically said that Paul, aka Rita's ex, is not a very nice man, is he? Not a very nice man at all. Now, Angel turns out to be a bit of a rat at this point, for what we've seen earlier in the episode. So this is not going to end well for Angel either, because you don't rat on one of your colleagues if you're a policeman. And then a couple of other points before I let you fill in the gaps. Harry lied to Dexter, but Deb makes it all about her. And my wife was watching this with me, and she commented that Deb is a whiny bitch. And I have to agree. She is a whiny bitch.
She is, yeah. I just dislike her. Completely dislike her, Andy.
Yeah. And my final point is about Rudy. Rudy is the consultant, aka Deb's boyfriend, aka soon to be revealed as the ice truck killer. He's multi-talented, isn't he? Because not only is he a doctor, but he's also a cable repairman.
He is indeed. So the reason we find out he's a cable repairman is because Dexter finds out that his biological dad has recently died, so they've gone up to empty the contents of the house. And Rudy obviously goes with them as well. And there's no Dexter kills in this episode, Andy. So there's a few episodes where he doesn't have any kills. And moving swiftly on episode 10, Dexter nearly passes out at a crime scene involving lots of blood. And we see that Paul is pressing charges against Rita, so that switching things around here for Rita, poor thing, because she's obviously knocked him out when he tried to come on to her in the bedroom. And Dexter, then this took me by surprise, Andy, because I originally thought this was something he was imagining. But Dexter knocks Paul out with the frying pan and then gives him a heroin shot. And it turns out Paul is sent back to jail for breaking his parole restrictions or obligations.
I completely agree about the it being all in his head. The way it was filmed as well, they're in the kitchen, aren't they? And Paul's just yelling, or he's in Dexter's face, and he's basically just intimidating him, just being a right piece of work. And when Dexter hit him with the frying pan, I was just waiting for that next shot where it goes back to the conversation, and he's just kind of what it's imagining in his head. But it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I thought that was really well done, like you just said. The ice truck killer case is reopened as well. And Batista, I always think of the wrestler, Andy, when we talk about Angel, visits Rudy at the hospital. And then later on, Angel is attacked and stabbed. And then my last comment here, Andy, is Rudy apologizes and tells Deb he loves her. So at least someone likes Deb.
Yeah, but he's we know at this point that is the ice truck killer, don't we? I'm just going through my paper notes. I think we actually find out in episode 8 that it's Rudy, don't we? And I don't think we made mention of that. I think we just skipped over that. Oh, you did write in your notes, we find out the identity. But yeah, it's Rudy. We already knew that. In terms of the podcast, we know. I'm confusing matters. But you get where I'm going at. I don't have much to add to episode 10. The collapsing scene, Dexter collapsing, blood really messes his head up, doesn't it? The stabbing, Angel stabbing, I didn't remember that at all. That really took me by surprise, that did. I can just completely put that out of my head. But again, no new Dexter kills. So for a serial killer, he's not killing all the time, but there's still a fair bit of killing going on around, so it's not all bad. So we're now on the penultimate episode 11. Jay, what were your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm just going to give some quick headlines here, Andy. So because of what's happening with Angel, Rudy ends up meeting up with the hooker with the prosthetics arm, hand, and he kills her, unfortunately, so she never made it. And he chops her up. Batista makes it through his surgery, so things are looking on the up there. Maria gets demoted as well, so that is something that I completely forgot about. And the last one I want to say, Andy, is there's 2 points. Rudy proposes to Deb, but my last comment is Dexter starts to put the pieces together. So what was your observations?
Really, really good episode this was. Random question I have here, but was this the first time we heard reference of Dexter's dark passenger? I think he mentions it in one of his sort of inner monologues.
I think it is, because when you mentioned that, I was thinking, I don't recall that being mentioned. And when Dexter said it, I was thinking, when we watched episode 11, I thought, I'm sure that's not been mentioned before.
No, I agree. And I think it's one of those things that I think is synonymous with Dexter. I think it becomes a repeated thing as the series go on. Another quote that had me laughing was from Masuka when they found the body parts under the Christmas tree. And he says, "Ho, ho, ho, another dead ho." Just very, very silly stuff. My last thing I want to call out is about Asta, so one of Rita's kids. She said she misses her dad. Dad obviously back in prison for reasons we've just discussed, but she certainly changed her tune from earlier in the series where she wanted nothing to do with him. But again, we have no new kills, but it's very much high drama right now, isn't it? Because, as you mentioned, Dexter's put the pieces together. Dexter knows who he is. Deb now knows who he is. This is about to go down.
Yeah, it brilliantly teases and sets it up for the last episode. And there's only a couple of things I want to do here, Andy, just to quickly discuss, is because there's so much happening in this episode, and everyone knows now that it's Rudy, so the cops know, and the new lieutenant, who I can't remember what her name is, but she comes in and she takes over the case from Maria as well. And then we get there. I know it seems a bit obvious, but Rudy does that thing where he goes and texts Deb out to sea, activates her phone or does something on her phone just so it can ping. And then later on you see he's actually transporting her in a stolen car as well. And I thought that was interesting. And Dexter then starts to figure out that Rudy, who he is, and has the flashback that reveals Rudy is his real brother. So they're the points that I wanted to pick out, Andy. Is there anything that you wanted to discuss?
It's hard to start talking about this episode without going another 3 hours. There's just so much going on. But I thought this whole final episode was set up beautifully. There was one bit where Paul tells Rita, Dexter is not who you think he is. And I thought that was really good foreshadowing. Of course, Rita doesn't believe him because she's besotted with Dexter. I have a question, which is, why does Dexter take Rudy, or Brian, to give him his real name, back to his apartment? Because that's an active crime scene. Because that's where they found he's got the freezer on it. So I thought that was really, really risky. But I want to leave you with this, and it's the line I've been waiting for, and it's of Dokes, and it's my lasting memory, and I use this in everyday life all the time, when Dokes sneaks up on Dexter and just says, "Surprise, motherfucker."
I forgot about his, that little phrase. That is, but going back to your question, Andy, I agree with you completely. Surely it is an active crime scene. It just seems, I won't say a schoolboy error because he obviously gets away with it. And maybe because he works in the police department, he knows that they've not got any kind of surveillance on there. But it is an active crime scene. It's just so risky. And like you were saying earlier on, in one of the episodes, he's just making more and more, taking more and more risk.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. And there's one more Dexter kill in this episode, of course, and that being Rudy, the ice truck killer, which brings us to an end season 1. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour. We didn't want to go too in-depth because there's 12 episodes, obviously a lot to go through. But a very, very good season nonetheless. Now, the rating room is all about the ratings. This is our small screen rank bank, so we're going to have to do what we always do, and that's go through some ratings and rankings. So let's start with the kill count. Obviously, it's the first season, so it's obviously going to be top of the list. But in the 12 episodes of season 1, we had 7 kills. 7 new kills, not counting things like flashbacks or things that are alluded to. So that gives us 0.58 kills per episode for season 1.
This season, in the small screen rank bank, we are going to rank the main villains. So we're obviously in season 1, so there's only Ice Truck Killer, so he's number 1 in my list, Andy. Is he number 1 in your list, Andy?
After careful deliberation, I can confirm he is currently number 1 in my list of main villains.
Very good. Would you like to give your rank of the season as a whole first, Andy?
Yeah, so obviously it's ranked top of the list as things stand. This list will evolve over the coming months, but we have to give a rating out of 10. That's what we do here on the rating room, and my rating is a 9 out of 10. An absolutely fantastic way to start our journey back into Dexter. Hooked from the minute I started watching it. Second time around, I loved it the first time round, but second time round, really, really enjoyed it. Even to the point where, as we've mentioned, I didn't take notes, and I was supposed to be doing it for purposes of the podcast. So just got so engrossed in some of the episodes, I thought it was absolutely tremendous. It's going to be difficult to top, I think. That's because it's a really strong opening season. We know we've got more to come. But 9 out of 10 of absolute classic season. What about you, Jay? What's your overall thoughts and rating on Dexter season 1?
I concur, Andy, actually. I was thinking about this and I thought, I can't give it 10 out of 10. Surely I can't give it 10 out of 10 because I give myself no wiggle room later on. And from memory, I have watched them all before, and from memory, I do think the season 1 is one of the strongest. I gave it 9 out of 10 because, as I mentioned earlier, and you kind of mentioned, there were no filler episodes, and the story kind of takes some twists and turns, and it was really good how they kind of highlighted, exposed who the main villain is, but then they kind of teased it, and then you get that sudden twist at the end in terms of who he actually is, in terms of his relationship with Dexter. So it's a very strong 9 out of 10.
Excellent, thank you, Jay. So I think that brings us to the end of our first episode of the Rating Room Extra. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, so you can send us any questions, suggestions, feedback that you might have via our social media channels, or by reaching out at us at theratingroom@gmail.com.
go to theratingroom.com for all the information. We've got tons of stuff on our website. We've got a YouTube channel at The Rating Room.
And you can find us on all major social media sites by searching for at The Rating Room. And make sure you subscribe to all our channels to stay up to date with the latest news.
Yeah, so next week we're going to bring a bit of seasonal cheer to proceedings. So don't be a cotton-headed ninny muggins. Smiling's my favourite. That doesn't fit. But next week we're going to be going into the Christmas spirit with Elf, starring Will Ferrell. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.